Hey everyone, for trichomes.com, I'm Ashley Manning, and this is Careers in Cannabis. On this show, we sit down with staffing agencies, cannabis companies, and other industry professionals to discuss employment opportunities in the burgeoning cannabis industry. Some states have dropped the extra $300 unemployment and are not seeing a hiring boost. Some residents are suing the state for taking away the benefits, and some states are being forced to reinstate that $300. Regardless of these recent headlines or your current employment status, one thing is very clear, and that is careers in cannabis continue to grow, and we're here to discuss some of those opportunities. Today's guest has over 20 years executive experience in hiring and recruiting people for several industries. And quoted by him, "I've built kick-ass teams that exceed expectations." On this episode, we talk with Bill Wednieski, the founder and managing partner of the Headhunters, who specialize in the recruitment and placement of professionals through the means of direct hire, executive search, or staff augmentation. Hey Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ashley.
It's great to have you here. It's been a few months since we've been connected and originally introduced, so happy that this interview is here today, and thank you for sharing your time with me because I have a ton of questions.
I had the date circled on the calendar, and I'm excited to talk to you as well, Ashley.
Well, thank you, Bill. So I usually just get right into my interviews and cut out with the fluff. And I usually start with pulling some recent headlines in the news. And what I was gathering this morning was states have either removed the $300 unemployment benefits, they've either reinstated the $300, and then in other states, some residents are suing the state to have it reinstated. So that was kind of the recent headlines that I saw. And so my question to you, regardless of those unemployment benefits, what do you think the hurdles are for getting the unemployed employed? But let me pause for a moment on that. They weren't seeing a boost in hiring regardless of unemployment benefits.
So I can tell you that I sit in Michigan, and Michigan still has the $300 pandemic unemployment assistance. I talked to a number of different businesses across state, not just across other states, not just cannabis, and no one can find hourly workers in entry level, whether it's manufacturing in Ohio or I work with an electronics company in South Carolina. They can't find hourly people, body shops, auto dealerships, medical. No one can find entry-level folks. And so I do think that the unemployment assistance is real, keeping some people on the shelf. That's not the whole story. It's just one factor.
For sure. And do you think that the cannabis industry could be doing more to emphasize the opportunity that's available to the unemployed?
I absolutely think so. It's still tough because it's competitive, and the pay oftentimes for entry-level roles in cannabis is not much different than it is in fast food or other retail.
Very accurate statement there. So what can cannabis companies start workforce development state specific? Sorry, let me back up on that question. I lost my train of thought on that. Can workforce development programs who are there to help the unemployed, are they able to work with cannabis companies to help push the message out and help show that there are the opportunities?
It's an interesting question. I don't know legally whether they can or can't, but just like the 50 states get to decide whether cannabis is legal in their state or not, I would expect a left-leaning state like a California to be all about promoting cannabis industry roles, where some of the more conservative states, it may still sadly be taboo to promote cannabis level or cannabis industry roles.
Is Michigan left-leaning? Where are they at on that?
Michigan's kind of one of those purple states like a Pennsylvania, where you've got a mix of Republicans and Democrats, and today it sits substantially Democrat. Both senators are Democrats. The governor's a Democrat. However, more members of the U.S. House of Representatives are Republicans, and both chambers of the state legislature are Republican held.
Okay. Well, do they incorporate workforce cannabis in their that you know of in their workforce development?
There is from time to time bipartisan pro-cannabis legislation and regulation passed here in the state of Michigan.
Okay. Makes sense. So let's, after covering a little bit of the recent headlines that I pulled and your opinion on them, I'd love to hear about how you got a career in cannabis and what you're doing today.
It's a good story. I found I was a CFO on the other side of the desk, different than what I do today. And I was a CFO of a registered investment advisor. So people took their 401k plans to us, and we put them into IRAs, and we invested them, and then we helped people kind of do retirement planning. The stock market took off. The company was sold. The acquirer had its own CFO that was they knew him, and they liked him more than I did, and so there wasn't a seat at the table. And as I was waiting for the deal to close and get my modest severance and go figure out what I was going to do next, a friend who had installed a drip line, he owned an irrigation company, and he put in a drip line system for a cannabis grow, like a 12,000 foot grow here in Michigan. And then the guy had accounting and tax issues and needed some help. And so I became the fractional CFO for a cannabis company in my spare time. So people that have a side gig driving for Uber, I was the part-time CFO for a cannabis company.
That's quite common in the cannabis industry as well. I'm noticing a trend. Startups, sometimes they can't afford to pay a CFO full time until they get going. So help them get their roots going and boots off the ground, so to speak. Right. And how did that parlay into what you're doing today?
So I took another role as a CAO, which I had two CFOs reporting to me, one from a family office and one from a real estate company. And at the same point in time, I had my partner was working for one of the largest national recruiting firms, and we were in the same building together. So we would kind of have lunch once a month. He was not happy, and he was encouraging me to join him and be his partner, and found the Headhunters, which we did.
Oh, wow. When did you found the Headhunters?
So I got started in late 2019 while he was wrapping up his work there, and we officially launched in January 2020, and rocking and rolling, and pandemic hit, and then the real shift and excitement of getting into cannabis started. And if you'll give me a minute, I'll kind of tell you the story.
Please do.
We had placed a controller to kind of replace me as that fractional CFO for that cannabis company. And the guy had just gotten his rec license, and a couple months prior, he'd gotten his recreational grow license, and like COVID hits, tell people they can't leave their homes. You get, at the time, it was $600 a week in federal unemployment assistance. So sales of alcohol and cannabis absolutely went through the roof. And then combined with Michigan was issuing licenses kind of one or two a month. And a lot of these cultivation folks, they don't exist in this state. They're in Denver, they're in Oregon, or state of Washington. They're out west. Oklahoma's got some, and you got to hunt and peck for them and entice them to come to Michigan. So it was like this perfect storm that allowed us to get into it. And plus I'd been through the regulatory process and I knew it. So shortly thereafter, we got our first, that guy called it a master grower. Other people call it cultivation directors. The person that is in charge of the grow. That's how we got into it.
Oh, wow. That's great. I think getting into it through the pandemic was a great opportunity for you because of the jobs, cannabis being deemed essential. So seems like a good timing. Do you also staff other industries?
Yeah. So accounting and finance comes most naturally to me. I'm a CPA as well. supply chain, human resources, and the bulk of my best experience is in kind of gritty manufacturing. There's a hard hat over my shoulder. I spent 7 years in steel. In Detroit, Michigan, automotive is huge here, but real estate, financial services as well.
Are some of those candidates opening their doors up to cannabis?
So it's certainly a question whenever we find a good candidate is asked, would you be open to cannabis? You have to ask the question.
Right. And are they giving you the thumbs up?
You're surprised both ways. I'll have the sweetest little old ladies tell me that they want to do something excited and really get into cannabis. They've never used it in their life, but their son or their daughter's into it and super passionate and excited about it. Or they're really conservative. I mean, I had a candidate that was perfect. In automotive, he oversaw like 6 plants and the finance for it, and he had to go to all these different places and do all this plant level analysis. So he's perfect for cannabis grow, someone that's really trying to dial in their profitability. Mm-hmm. And he was like, Bill, there's no way I can't do this.
Oh, wow.
The stigma is too heavy.
Oh, wow. Wow. And do you typically just go, okay, and move on, or do you try to encourage them to get into it? It's not what they think.
No, I mean, you can't force somebody into something they don't want to do. And you ultimately, at the end of the day, if I place somebody in something that they're not going to be happy in, it's not going to work out. Like the cannabis owner is going to be unhappy because the guy or the girl quit on him, or cannabis isn't for everybody. It's kind of the wild, wild west. So you got to have a thicker skin, or be used to there not being like an employee handbook or the set schedule. Here's the holidays you get off that we pay you for.
So accurate.
I'm glad I'm cracking you up.
100%, because it's very accurate to hear that. It's also reassuring for myself, to know those things. But startup, take cannabis out of it. Cannabis industry is in its infancy. Its trajectory is definitely headed in the right direction for sure. Just going to take some time for us to get there. And the last thing I think a lot of these companies are thinking about is employee handbooks. They just first need to actually grow the plant. And if they can't grow the plant, there's no sense in having an employee handbook almost. So I appreciate your transparency on, your opinion regarding that, because that's the answer I was looking for also. Not that I can it or anything, but it's definitely the answer. I wanted to make sure you're not just placing people in a position that they may not be interested in. If they're giving you opposition, that's probably a recruiting 101.
No, honestly, Ashley, I feel like we're life changers in that, for good and for bad. We can find a candidate that's terrific and in the worst possible situation. We can also, from time to time, help somebody that's unemployed pivot into something that's awesome. Or you can find a company owner that's just dying to find this little niche person, and the lifeblood of their business depends on getting the best person in that role.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sounds corny, but I take what we do really seriously.
As I think recruiting should, you are building teams, and in order for you to be successful, the teams you're building also need to be successful. So, and I know that's not necessarily, recruiting has been stigmatized itself, and headhunting, just the name, but it's not that way if you're being transparent with your people. So thank you for being that way. So let's shift gears a little again to some open opportunities that the Headhunters has available.
Sure. I have a general manager role for a dispensary that I'm working on that requires prior experience. And then we're looking for a cultivation supervisor, probably an assistant manager here in Metro Detroit. Northern Michigan, I have a couple of roles. One is a post-harvest manager, and then a weekend supervisor for another grow in Northern Michigan. And then we work with an outdoor cannabis farm that kind of needs a farm manager / leader. And that person doesn't even necessarily need to have cannabis experience.
Project management sometimes can really fall in line with a lot of these roles. I think is that accurate to say?
That one especially, it's like the number 2 criteria on that one. So they got to build a lean-to. They had a reverse osmosis system on the farm that they built, and it just takes a person that's been in an indoor grow, even if it's a massive one, the experience can't translate to a 12-month a year operation with Mother Nature involved and the unpredictability of what happens outside.
Absolutely. So critical thinking skills, because you never know, and being very familiar with regulations also would be helpful, but not necessarily needed depending on the facility. For the retail general manager, you said experience, meaning cannabis experience or just general retail experience?
Cannabis experience. So a reload to Michigan. Okay. Most likely a relocation. It's a rural town, so I always tell candidates that if you got your heart set on Thai food or something unique, you're probably going to have to drive a long way if you want this role.
Hey, once again, transparency is important. Last thing you want to do is find out you're driving 45 minutes just to get to work every day, or it's not what you anticipated because you were sold on it because the recruiter needed to meet their quota.
Yeah, traditionally I'll tell people Northern Michigan tends to have more cannabis grows, but if you like ice fishing, snowmobiling, deer hunting, hiking, mountain biking, and you're fine living out in the middle of forest or farm country, there's plenty of roles here in Michigan.
Oh, that's great news to hear, because Michigan's one of the faster growing markets. And I think Michigan personally can take the lead in some of what is going overall in the industry due to the demographics of the market, especially social equity. I think social equity is really important in the Michigan market, in all the markets, but I think they can take the lead in that. So I look forward to the growth in Michigan. How can people reach you or see these positions?
The best way is LinkedIn, and I'll actually put a plug in that, if there are cannabis candidates out there and you're not on LinkedIn, you make it really hard for me or my competitors to find you. So look me up on LinkedIn. It's Bill Wednieski, Wednieski, and I'm the owner of the Headhunters. We have a website, www.theheadhunters-us.com, or those are the best 2 ways. And my contact information is all out there on LinkedIn, or just connect with me.
Awesome. One last question that I have for you today is, what would be some big brother advice you would give someone who's on the fence about having a career in cannabis?
Depending on what level you're at, if you're a person I meet a lot of people that have grown in their backyard and for a long time, and it's like they have to pinch themselves that they could actually do this for a living. If you're really serious about it and if you want to run a grow, I think having education to support that, whether that's an ag degree, botany, horticulture, those are really helpful, and they give you kind of the credibility to stand there in a management meeting with your statistics and being able to put together like a dazzling deliverable that would knock your boss's socks off. I also think you gotta jump off the diving board at some point. So it is still a taboo, edgy industry, and you gotta be comfortable with that, and you gotta not care what some people think.
Thank you for giving that big brother advice. I know I wish my brother gave me some of it. You have more?
No, one small piece. I mean, it was funny because I'm I was all freaked out when COVID hit and we started placing people left, right, and center in cannabis. Like, what the heck is some auto executive going to say when I write on LinkedIn about how I got into the cannabis business? Never, not once did anyone reach out to me and frown and say like, hey, you really shouldn't do that. Not once.
Wow. That is great to hear. Is there any last things you would like to leave off before we head out today?
No, appreciate the platform, Ashley, and you reaching out to me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing your time, and I look forward to having you back to talk about some more open opportunities. I'd love to have you back next quarter and next season, which would be right at Croptober. So I look forward to chatting with you then.
Excellent. Thanks, Ashley.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. Bye.
Hey, thanks for watching our channel. Click here to watch another episode of Careers in Cannabis and more great shows and interviews. To find more cannabis industry reporting, insider stories, and to stay up to date on the latest trends, make sure you subscribe and keep up to date with the Trichomes community app. Download it now and we'll see you there.